Hey, what's going on, guys? Jake Tech here, back with another video. And today we're going to be going over Starfield and how it runs on my current system. And as I've kind of struggled with performance, we're going to be talking about the installation of the Nexus Mods Starfield frame generation mod. So we're going to do some tests before where I run Starfield on ultra settings with my current system. And then I have some custom settings that I mostly use, which is kind of a mix between high and medium settings. And we're going to do that for a couple different locations. Then we're going to install the Starfield frame generation DLSS mod. And we're going to run those same tests back again and see what our performance increases are, if there are any. So starting off, let's kind of talk about the testing we're going to be doing and talk about my system. So currently I do have a AMD NVIDIA build. So I'm running a 5900X for the CPU, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and we are running a RTX3080. And for the display, I'm going to be running my Alienware ultra wide monitor. It's a 34-inch 3440 by 1440 2K ultra-wide monitor. Now, majority of titles that I've played I've had great success with this particular build that I've been running for a while now. And frame rates have always been very comfortable between the high and ultra settings on this 2K ultra-wide monitor. I think like most people have experienced, Starfield has been the exception though. Starfield so far has not run well on my system, even though I've had other very intensive titles run well. One of the clips I'll show you guys, which I've recently taken, is Battlefield 2042 on ultra settings. We averaged about 80 FPS at ultra, which was very comfortable, very nice looking graphics. Usually I play more towards the higher end of settings and kind of medium high just to maximize my frame rate. So talking a little bit more about the testing, I picked a couple spots, one being in New Atlantis, which is probably one of the larger scenes that is generated in Starfield. Definitely a lot of distant elements as well as close elements that there's a lot that needs to be rendered. So that's going to be one of the more intensive places. And then the other spot I picked was Nisoi, which if you've selected for one of the early game, I guess, traits or attributes that you can get when you're creating your character is the dream home. So your dream home will be on Nisoi, and I've noticed that the frame rates in this area are just awful. And then as far as capturing this testing, I did film most of this looking at my monitor from my camera opposed to doing like a screen recording. I really didn't want any other elements such as other applications running in the background that could perhaps hinder our performance. So we didn't do much OBS screen recording. I captured most of this just from the camera. Alrighty guys, going over the stats of our initial testing. So this is going to be no DLSS mod for New Atlantis. Running custom settings, which is, like I said, my mix of medium and high, which I'll kind of have on the screen. We averaged around 53 FPS running these custom settings in the area where you dock your spacecraft. And you can kind of see it for the most part. I picked a point where we are rendering some distant elements such as the city of New Atlantis and some of the taller buildings, and then along with some of the closer elements as well entering the city. Definitely not ideal, but in Starfield's case, this is kind of the more comfortable FPS experience I've had in the game so far. Switching over to ultra settings, and the only thing I change on this is I just disable motion blur. So we're just running regular ultra settings without motion blur. We were getting around 44 FPS in this same area. The texture resolution and everything looks quite a bit nicer, but you know, when you are running ultra settings opposed to before, we were kind of in the 50s, going from 44 in the same spot. Other areas, you know, you'll kind of drop down to around, you know, the mid 30s, sometimes right around 30. So definitely becomes a less comfortable gaming experience. And like all games, you do have the trade-off between graphic fidelity and frame rate. Jumping over to Nisoi, we did the same test in an area that's just kind of outside where you'll be able to see your quote dream home and your spacecraft where it lands. So in this area, we did a couple pans. Running my custom settings, we were getting around 37 FPS. And kind of like before, this is kind of the most comfortable frame rate I've been able to get in this area with those custom settings. Going over to ultra, we're around 30, kind of at best. You know, we would squeeze out a couple more frames in certain, you know, very low view distance areas. But for the most part, you would get 30 and then it would dip below that as well. So definitely not a very comfortable gaming experience, especially from PC when in this area of Nisoi. So with some of those initial benchmarks out of the way, we're going to go through the installation of the mod. Alrighty guys, so I'm going to walk us through where you need to drag and drop the new downloads that you have for this mod. So there's going to be 3 downloads as I mentioned. So we're going to make sure we have the main download from Nexus Mods, which is the FSR2 Streamline download. So when you go to manually download and you download from here, it'll download the mod. But it also has a disclaimer that you'll have to install this DLSS DLL and the DLSS GDLL, which is a couple other links from TechSource. So the DLSS frame 3 generation is going to be this download here. So you can download the 3.5, which is the latest. So we can go ahead and download that. Then the other link is going to be the DLSS DLL. So DLSS 3 frame generation DLL, NVIDIA DLSS DLL. So kind of confusing. I want to make sure that I go through this a little bit slower. I just don't think other videos do a good job of explaining this. So it's a 3-part mod, and these are the 3 parts you'll need. So over here on my desktop, I have these 3 downloads. They're all extracted. And the first thing we did was we located our Starfield, our main install of Starfield. So in my case, I have it on my D drive, and I have a folder for my Xbox games specifically, and then we have one for Starfield. So this is the main folder. In here we have our Starfield executable file, so that's the actual file to launch the game. And the first thing you're going to do is that FSR2 Streamline folder. You're going to copy the contents from this into your main folder. So once that's done, you'll have it in here. Then you want to access your Streamline folder. And this is where you're going to have your standard Starfield DLL files. So we're going to go to our other 2 downloads, the DLSS 3 5.0. We have this one here. We're simply going to drag and drop that into here. So we'll close out of that. We're going to go to the DLSS 3.5 DLL. And this is going to be the GDLL. Go ahead and copy that into the Streamline folder. And you'll be able to see both of them in there. There'll be the NVNGX DLSS files in the Streamline folder. Alright guys, just to give you a recap of what we did, I am going to include the links below in the video for where I got these downloads. Please use at your discretion, as they're pretty reputable sources between Nexus Mods and Tech Power Up, but you never know if something gets corrupted or if they have some sort of breach, so please use at your discretion. So just to recap what we did, so we're going to go step by step, kind of recapping this. The FSR2 we pulled from the Nexus Mods. So that's the main download here we pulled. So we downloaded that, extracted it. We copied all the contents from this into our main Starfield install folder. So for me, it's Starfield content, and this is the main folder for all the Starfield content. So we copied these contents into here, into the content folder. That may vary whether you installed from Xbox or Steam. In my case, I did this from the Xbox app, just because I got it through Game Pass. Next, we installed the DLSS 3.5 DLL, which comes from the link that was also through Nexus Mods, but this download comes from Tech Power Up. So we downloaded that, extracted it, and then that goes in the Streamline folder. So we went from here, the DLSS 3.5 DLL, copied that from my download into the new Streamline folder, and we did the same thing for the DLSS GDLL, which came from the other Tech Power Up link that was also from Nexus Mods. So we copied that and put it in the Streamline folder as well, and that should be all we need to do. hopefully you guys were able to follow that okay. I saw a lot of other videos that really were like dragging and dropping files really quick, so I want to make sure everybody, you know, was able to see what we did here. So that should be it for the mod. And I will say, when we do go into the game, it's still going to say FSR2, but it's going to have the NVIDIA DLSS files running instead, and that's kind of part of the mod, but it will still say FSR2. I don't believe we'll get an option for DLSS in the actual graphics slider there, or the selection. So now we're going to go back into the game, see what kind of results we have for frame rates, and just kind of do some benchmark testing of where we did earlier. Alrighty guys, so now that our mod's been installed, we're going to be returning to the same places, and I'm going to try and emulate the same times a day in Starfield to get the most consistent results, or at least try and strive for the same lighting we were getting, as that could be a factor in some FPS changes. Now that the testing's completed, I'd say overall the FPS change for me in the system I'm running was kind of marginal. We did see improvements, but not as much as I thought we would get. But mileage may vary, so it's very much dependent on your PC and the display you're running. So going over to ultra settings at New Atlantis, I think it's kind of hard to gauge when we go return to the same spot. We only saw like a 4 FPS increase, but I think as far as the FPS consistency and then how the game looked, I think we did see more improvements in that category. So even though it was a marginal FPS increase on ultra settings in New Atlantis, about 4 FPS on average, I do think that the quality of the graphics is a lot better. It's definitely a lot sharper. Colors might be a little bit more rich as well, but I definitely didn't see the FPS increase I had hoped for, but I do think this is an upgrade. Returning back to the same custom settings I was running, the mix between high and medium settings. Once again, marginal increase, we only saw 5 FPS increase, as in the same spot we were getting around 58 FPS. The good thing with this is you're kind of tightening up the floor and ceiling of your FPS, kind of where your low end of FPS doesn't seem as low anymore. And then of course the high is a little bit more consistent. You will get a few more frames there too in certain areas. Going back to the pure disgustingness of Nisoi, we did see an increase. Once again, kind of marginal. We went from 37 FPS to 39 FPS, where we kind of do the same pan looking over the dream house and where our spacecrafts landed. Ultra settings, we stayed right about 30, but I will say in this area, as we said in New Atlantis, I do think the graphic fidelity is a lot better. I think the graphics themselves have increased quite a bit. And there could be more areas too where you see greater improvements. I just kind of picked one of the more popular areas, being New Atlantis, and kind of the more graphically strenuous areas. And kind of one that's just very poorly optimized from what I've seen is Nisoi, where the dream house is. So try to see if we got any improvements out of that. So that is going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you for checking this one out. I apologize, I'm getting this video out a lot later than I expected, but I'm sure there's still some users out there that could find this video helpful if they're having issues with Starfield and how it's running, like I have. And this video kind of overall encompasses the system I'm running, as I have seen a lot of other people that are running, you know, an AMD CPU setup and, you know, NVIDIA RTX30 series graphics cards that have been having kind of a lot of issues like I have. And hopefully this gave you a good idea on how to install this DLSS mod if you are running an NVIDIA graphics card. Overall, from my experience, I've kind of found the performance increase to be marginal when it comes to the FPS side of things. I think the bigger thing that I saw on my system and my testing was the actual image quality. Along with those few extra frames, I did feel like the image quality was a lot better, overall making a better experience. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like on it, and if you want to see more tech related videos like this one, be sure to subscribe. As always guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.